Bit of a tongue twister there from Property Developer Network. And thank you once again for coming to another one of our Sunday sessions. This week's topic is on discounted properties. It's going to be how to find it, how to secure it, and how to create win-win scenarios for both sides of the equation. And to help us out this week, we have a special guest, Arun Burla. Arun is from Uber Dream Homes. And Arun is a specialist who works as a property buyer, I guess, or buyer's agent is probably the better word for saying that. Is that, Arun? And you specialize in acquiring discounted properties with development potential.
Yes, that's a very accurate description, Rob, and thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to come today and talk to all our members.
Anytime, mate, anytime. So we should probably start right at the very beginning with a little bit of a definition. What is a discounted property? Because everyone measures it a different way. So what's a good way to determine if you actually truly got a bargain?
Okay. I think if we take an example, let's say the property is listed at 1 million, so that's the asking price. And if we make an offer and let's say it's at 900K, does that amount to a $100,000 discount? The answer is no, because the discount should be measured from the market price rather than the asking price, because asking price is something anybody can put up whatever they like.
Yeah, we see it all the time where people ask really crazy numbers and you think you're getting a discount because they asked a real high number to start with. But in reality, you need to do your own market analysis to say, well, what is it truly worth? Not what are they asking for? And then measure your discount from there. So I guess that's something that a lot of people actually struggle with, is what is truly market price. I use tools like RP Data and Price Finder, and there's a couple of other free tools out there that you know, on the house, and a couple of others that help you give some history of what's sold in the area. But you really need to be an area expert to understand that stuff, don't you?
I myself use RP Data, and I look at what sales have happened of similar properties, similar number of bedrooms, bathrooms, land area, and the state of the property within the last 6 months, or in the case of COVID, maybe last 3 months, within the 500-meter radius of the subject property.
Yeah, very good. So all of us want a discounted property. We've been told, you know, you make your money when you buy, not when you sell. But so we want to get these discounts, but a lot of us are worried that we're actually taking advantage of the person selling the property, that they're in some unfortunate situation. So what's your point of view on, you know, are we taking advantage or not taking advantage of people in those situations?
Let's talk through some comparable examples. We all love a closing down sale. In that situation, are we taking advantage of the business that is gone into bad days? Or let's take a Boxing Day sale, or end of financial year car sales, where you know, they may offer the discounts of $5,000 or extended warranty. And another example of Flemington markets, for those of you who are not in Sydney, that is that's like the Paddy's market, or where all the groceries and are sold. And if you go there towards when the market closes, roughly around 2 p.m., they're already discounted because the farmers come directly to, and there are no intermediaries. But at 2 p.m. or so, because they are winding up, they will even sell you for a further 50% discount. So all of us are very familiar with these scenarios, and we never think that we are taking advantage of it, right? So why is the property market any different? It's exactly the same thing. You have got some dollars, and you want to get the maximum, say in the case of a developer situation, maximum land with maximum development potential.
So I agree. So in that situation where the markets, for example, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, they're getting close to packing up, and the less stuff they've got to pack up, the easier it is for them to get home in a hurry and get home to their friends and family and that sort of thing. And so their need is to get home as quickly as humanly possible. And so I guess one of the topics that you wanted to talk about is understanding needs analysis. And, when we can actually understand the driver as to what might be sitting behind the scenes, we can actually get some insights into where those bargains may actually appear. So what's your point of view on needs analysis and how that actually works?
Absolutely. So then let's take the example of the Flemington markets again. So if the farmer at the end of the day, if he has got his stuff left, then there are two options he has got. Either because he's dealing with perishables, so it's quite possible that it might become next to nothing as far as the value is concerned, or he can sell it for 50%. So that is the reason why he sells at that discount, because it's better than nothing. So it's a win-win situation. So take a scenario where you can I don't know the exact price, but let's say we can buy a water bottle for $2 at Coles, right? Now, if even if I am willing to sell that same water bottle at $1, and if I'm standing next to a sprinkler, I will have trouble selling that bottle of water, because the water is available free over there. Why would anyone bother to pay?
Absolutely.
On the other hand, if you are traveling from, let's say, Sydney to Perth, and right in the middle of the desert, your car has broken down, that water bottle is required for you to put in the radiator and get the car started. Then you don't mind paying 10 times the value of the water bottle and get yourself going. So the value that you attach is composed of two components. One is the financial value, and the second is the non-financial value.
So you're referring to that as the seller value, where you're saying there's a seller's financial value and the non-financial. So the intangible is what other people might call that.
Right. Absolutely. So it could be the value that somebody attaches to non-financial needs or emotional needs, or it could be just a peace of mind, or it could be the convenience. For example, if I buy a bottle of Coke from a corner shop, I don't mind paying a little bit extra, because I can buy the same thing from Woolies at a discount. But it's just that it's faster, quicker, and I can do it quickly. I'm saving time.
And it's already cold. So that, there's an intangible value added to just time factor.
Correct.
So it's about understanding what the actual true financial value is and what all of those intangible values that people have actually placed on their property. And sometimes those intangibles can work in your favor, and sometimes it can work against you. And it's really understanding that is kind of how I'm taking that. Is that a good assessment of that situation?
Yeah, absolutely. So the same thing applies to the buyer side as well. So the buyer attaches some value, and it has got some financial value, and it has got some non-financial value for the buyer as well. But today we are concentrating just on the seller side, right? So
Yeah.
the total value to the seller is equal to the financial value to the seller plus the non-financial value to the seller, right? Now, this financial value is composed of sale price, and I'm just listing out some of the components to give the viewers an idea. The seller is interested in the net dollars that he gets out of it. So he pays the selling agent fees. He might have to pay capital gains tax, and depending on when the settlement is due, there might be some negative cash flow during till the settlement. And there also might be, if the seller is overseas, There might be, he might have to take some time off and travel to the site.
Yeah,
So
so I like to think of that as the dollar you earn and the dollar you keep, not necessarily the same thing. And
correct. So, or you can say in gross value and the net value. I think that most people will understand that very well.
yeah, and if we can understand how that the dollar they get to keep lands in their pocket, if we can actually understand what the normal value of that would be through a normal transaction, then we can propose an alternate transaction where there is no seller's agent fee in there. So therefore, there's more money in their pocket. So the list price might be lower, but what lands in their pocket is actually higher.
Exactly. So that's how we create the win-win situation. For example, if we wanted to avoid the selling agent fees, we can go directly to the vendor, and we have eliminated a middleman, and therefore there is more to share between the buyer and the seller.
Yeah, and you've got a situation there. You're talking about negative cash flow until settlement. So if they're in a financial sticky financial situation where they're losing money every week or every month, the quicker we can settle, then the less negative cash flow for them.
Exactly. If they're in a distressful situation, then obviously they're living in a property that they can't afford. For example, in a mortgage repossession case, then the sooner we end their misery, the better it is from not only financial angle, but also non-financial, because they're going through a lot of stress.
So it really comes down to trying to actually understand what their situation is, what their motives and drivers, and what are the things that are happening in and around their environment.
Right.
Correct. So can you give some examples of the other value components for a seller? So what are some of the things that we could and should be looking for that are in that intangible area?
Okay. So we understand the financial value to the seller. Now we'll look at the non-financial values to the seller. Now, obviously, these are subjective values which the seller places on the intangibles around the transaction. For example, let us say two people make an offer for a property, and it's a distress situation, and one person makes a normal offer with a week's cooling off period, and the second one gives a Section 66W certificate. That's what it's called in New South Wales. I don't know about the other states, but that means they are waiving the cooling off period, and therefore the stressful situation is brought to a closure as far as the seller is concerned, because it's a done deal. So
Yeah.
you are adding something to your offer without really increasing the financial contribution. So that is one example.
I might just add, Arun, because this is a national audience, a number of people wouldn't understand that Section 66W. So it is effectively the ability to waive your cooling off period and make the contract unconditional straight away, which gives certainty to the other side. And so sometimes that certainty provides a lot of value themselves, because I've seen many situations where the person has either bought another property down the road and they need certainty that this property is sold in order to buy the one down the road, for example. Or they're moving into an old age home and they need money to get into the old age home. So I've seen lots of situations like that. And certainty is a massive intangible value to many people.
It basically saves you 1 week of stressing over it, whether the person is going to exercise his cooling off rights or not. So think about it as 1 week of stress. That's the whatever value you attach, depending on what the value of it is to the person. Now,
I might just touch on that before we go too far. and obviously we've got an audience full of developers who invariably are always looking for a due diligence period. So if you're looking to waive that sort of thing, you need to be very, very certain that the property actually has the development potential that you're actually looking for. Because yes, you may be able to get a discount, but if you can't do the development you're looking for, so make sure you know your rules, you know your area, you know, I guess what council will actually allow in looking at that property, and you've done as much due diligence as you can before putting that offer in.
Also, on the same topic, I would like to say that the off-market deals saves even more time. So that is much more valuable to the seller.
Well, it saves time because they don't have to get their house ready. They don't have to do marketing photos. They don't have to go and talk to a whole bunch of agents and work out which agent is the best one. They don't have to pay for marketing fees. And then they don't have to wait for the people to actually respond and home opens. So, you know, it saves not only time, but it actually saves hard money being able to go off market.
It's the cost of renovation and the cost of cleanup, especially if it's a diseased property and nobody has been living for quite some time. And if it's an overseas seller, then there will be travel and accommodation costs. So there are a number of things going with it. And it's just, if you make the transaction more convenient for the seller, then that's an intangible and even a financial benefit in this case.
Yeah.
Now, if we take the case of a mortgagee repossession, right? If the buyer or if the seller is going to lose the house, let us say whatever, in a month period or in a week's period, basically he will lose the control over the property, over what what it is sold for. Not only that, he is going to lose his credit history, which is much, much more valuable to them. It could be easily worth hundreds of thousands of dollars because if he gets a black mark, he cannot get a new loan for a new home. He cannot get a loan for a business, and that's much more valuable. So we are getting a discount and still creating a win-win situation for both the parties. Let's take another example of a non-financial benefit. Let's say we have a situation where somebody is trying to upgrade or downsize, right? So basically, there are two transactions that need to happen. One is a sale of the existing property and the purchase of the new property. Now, both of these things have to be coordinated, but as you know, one has to happen before the other. It's impossible to synchronize this perfectly in time. So the issue is whether if this person buys the new property first, right? Then the problem is that he has paid the deposit, but if the sale doesn't happen, he will lose the deposit. We are assuming that he cannot afford both the properties at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So if he pays for the new property and he cannot sell in time, he will lose the deposit. If he sells the property first and cannot buy the second property in time, that means he has to rent somewhere else, and then he has to, when he buys the new property, he has to move again. So there's two moves, and it's said that moving experience is one of the worst. What do they call it? Distressing situation there. So if you can minimize that by just offering, by being flexible with the settlement period, you have generated enormous value for the seller.
Absolutely. And you can also generate a bunch of value for yourself with that flexible settlement timeline as well. So quite often you can use that time to your advantage, and that for example, they might, and I had a situation for myself where a person needed to sell a property, but they hadn't yet chosen where they want to move to. They wanted 3 months to try and find that new place in order to move. And so I said, no problem at all. I'm happy to settle in 3 months' time. And that was 3 months less holding costs for me. That was 3 months, I guess, where I could actually go do my development approvals, that sort of thing. So that is valuable to them. It's also valuable to you if you can be flexible in that.
Oh, precisely, because that is the reason why I say that a deceased estate is a win-win situation, is the perfect type of property for developers, because you can use that time to get the development approval through. So I getting back to win-win solution, I just wanted to emphasize that how do we create a win-win solution. As we said, the total value to the seller is the financial value plus the non-financial value, and the seller's goal is to maximize the total sale value. Whereas for us as a buyer, we are trying to minimize the sale price. So the two things are totally different and they are not mutually exclusive. And as long as we understand those equations, we can create a win-win solution.
Yeah, absolutely. And we need to understand that all of those non-financial values and in going in and actually getting to understand somebody's actual need, that's really where it starts. When we actually understand their need, we can start to see those intangible values, and we can actually start to assign a monetary figure to those intangible elements. It's time. We can actually say, well, there's a holding cost associated with that. There's a moving cost that might be associated with that. There's the hassle of the renovation, all sorts of things like that. We can start to add that up, and our job is to then present that back to the vendor and say, well, yes, the list price is one thing, but if we've avoided all these other costs, we can actually give you more money in your pocket by giving you less, by being flexible in all these other places.
So let's talk about financial value, Rob. So we talked about avoiding the selling agent fees by going direct to the vendor. So that's one example of increasing the financial value to the seller. Let's look at another example. In fact, this is an example where my personal example, I had bought 5 car spaces from a developer who had gone into liquidation, right? And last year, I was starting up this business, and I was on a low marginal tax rate, right? So this is, I advertised the car space, and I offered an end of financial year discount of $1,000, and I had 5 of them, and I had also advertised that the first car will get an additional $1,000 off. Now the condition was it has to be done before the end of the year. So on 30th of June,
you've created urgency, which always gets people interested.
Yeah, and it was not that it was coming out of my pocket, right? It was just that I would be paying less tax. So the less tax I was paying, I was splitting the between both myself and the buyer, right? So on 30th of June, the price was $25,000, and on 1st of July, it was $26,500. So that equates to like 6% rise within a day.
Yeah, which is massive.
So as long as we understand the needs and we take care of them without costing us anything, that's what it's all about.
Yeah, absolutely. So with that in mind, mate, there's an expression called the 6 Ds of discounts. So I thought it might be good where we actually just walk through those 6 Ds for people. And the first one of those Ds is death and or deceased estate. So if we just touch on a couple of the needs that might be sitting in around this, that might give some people some insights into, I guess, how we can help to come up with that win-win scenario we're talking about.
Okay. So in the case of death, what happens is typically the person might have died with or without a will. So there is a slightly different process. It goes through the courts, whether it goes through probate or something else, and it's normally a lengthy period, right? Now, the second thing is at that age, a person is more interested in the quality of his life and his health and relations rather than upkeep of the property. So normally the diseased estates are run down properties, right? And they are not even in a tenantable condition in some cases, right? So in those cases, first of all, the lengthy process has been illegal. Legal process has been lengthy, and the property has been sitting idle, earning no income at all, right? And still the ongoing expenses are still happening, the council rates and insurances and whatever, right? So there is some financial leak happening. On the other hand, there could be, depending on what the situation is, how many beneficiaries are there, and what sort of relationships they have. There might be a likely family dispute. So the shorter you can fix it, the value that you bring in is increased by cutting short the process, right? Um, and if you can approach the vendor before even the property comes to the market, you're again increasing the value to the seller. Because by you're cutting down their selling agent fees, you're taking out any renovation costs, or cleanup costs, because as a developer, all you're interested is run down property, buy at land value, and develop.
And I would add to that in many instances, the beneficiaries aren't locally based. They're not in a position where they can actually do anything to get the property market ready. There's a few issues and challenges that regularly present itself in these sorts of things. And it's identifying all of those intangibles that we touched on before and saying, well, I can make it nice and clean in most instances for you. There is the opposite side of the coin, though, where you can't always get a discount. So there, on occasion, the needs for the beneficiaries are, well, this is their one and only time to cash in, and so they're going to do everything they can to get maximum price. But even that can work to your advantage if you can get things like time on your hands and stuff like that. So
true. So, but the point about renovation costs is, supposing there are 4 beneficiaries, and just to get it to a marketable state, they have to spend a little bit of renovation money, and they may have the money, may not have the money, or let's say, or some may have the money and some may not have the money, and if they can't figure out how to finance that, then you are solving that problem. So essentially, you are acting as a problem solver, and as long as you solve problems which has got value in the eyes of the seller, you are in business.
Yeah, absolutely.
Now, the point that I also acknowledge the point that you make is every diseased estate is not going to be a discounted property. Because, for example, if there is only one beneficiary, he's doing extremely well, he has no urgency to sell, he's not going to sell at a discount because he doesn't have the need. So think about the same situation. You have a water bottle and the sprinkler is there. Why would you pay for the water bottle, right?
Yeah. So it's absolutely understanding that. So what if we go on to our next D? So divorce. Now, this can create all sorts of challenges, and the divorce proceedings are quite often 2 parties not wanting to talk to each other. They can be long and protracted and drawn out. And the solution that seems really obvious to me is, well, we're just taking away one of those pain points, and it's one more thing they don't need to argue over.
Precisely. So there is already so much of baggage to it. They already it has come to that point of divorce. So obviously, it's quite likely. I mean, people can separate amicably as well, but normally that's not the case. They may not be on a talking terms. They may not even like to see each other. So if you are, how are they going to be on the same team to negotiate with a potential buyer? So you're solving that problem. You're bringing an end to their misery. You're giving them a closure to their dispute, right? Also, if the two will be living apart, so obviously one person is living in the property and it becomes a unaffordable property because now there is only one income to support. So you're putting an end to the leakage supporting an unaffordable property, right? On top of that, if you have, again, the same, if you approach them before it goes into the market, then you are again saving them a lot of time, heartache, and the financial and non-financial values by again saving on the selling costs, auctioneer fees, renovation costs, so on.
And I'm going to say the ability to negotiate in these instances really depends on which party you're actually dealing with. So in my experience, I've found that on one side, there's quite often a disgruntled person who wants to get it over and done with really quick. And the other side, there's quite often one, they might be disgruntled, but they want to dig their heels in and they're willing to fight. So it's a matter of understanding the needs of both sides and being able to find, I guess, the lowest common denominator that fits both sides' needs.
Very valid point. Every property that falls into one of these special situations may not be a good candidate. So that's where the negotiation skills come into the picture. In this particular case, you will have to talk to two different parties, and if you cannot see them meeting, coming to a meeting point, then it's possibly best to leave this one and move on to the next one. So there is a time component which is required to identify the property, and there is a negotiation skill required to make the discount happen. So those are the two critical skills: to identify the property and to negotiate well.
Yeah, very good. What if we move on to our next one, mate? Debt. Whether it be a mortgagee in possession or a bankruptcy or a liquidation, something along those lines. Depending upon where you happen to come across the property in the process, I guess the repossession process can actually take some time in the legal process. And I've found that the later you are in the process, the more you're able to actually get the bigger discount.
Oh, very true. There is so just to cut things short, there's a lengthy process. If somebody defaults on their installment, the banks have to issue, they will send letters, and there is certain time periods, after a month, and they will make phone calls, and then it will move from their normal department to another department. I forget the name of that department. It's called something.
Well, it's the repossession team. So they have different names in.
Yeah, different name. And basically, the thing is, it may take up to say somewhere around 9 months before the property can be repossessed. In the meantime, the bank is losing a lot of dollars in following up, engaging a solicitor, and everybody knows what the solicitor costs. So even the cost of the solicitor might be around 40,000 to 50,000 during the whole time. And meanwhile, the interest bill is kicking up. The penalty interest rates are being applied, right? And let's paint a scenario. Let's say there is a businessman, and let's say because of the COVID situation, that his business is not working fine, so he's falling behind, right? Now, he has got two options. Either he starts taking a quick action and decides, okay, I'll just get rid of the property, or you might think, oh, how long is this going to last? There has been SARS and Ebola, and 6 months later it will be all done. So it's a chance he's taking. So 6 months have passed, and who knows what is going to happen to Corona now, right? So it's a difficult decision, and uh, everybody has got a different risk appetite, and most people will like to hope for the best, and they might get into a situation where, okay, the legal process is complete. The bank has now got the legal rights to take over the property, right? So in that case, now what options are there for the owner of the property? So there are two options. Either it just remember the analogy with the Flemington markets at 2 p.m., right? He has got two options. He has to either get, also let us say this is a $1 million property and it has got 400,000 equity in it, right? So there is $4,000 equity, which is what is needed to be protected. Now he has if he gets because of the time limitation, he has got two options. Either he finds somebody quickly, and because of the time limit, he can offer a discount, or he forfeits the property, the bank takes control, and then he has no control over the sale price, and his credit history is tarnished. And also is losing money every month, because it's he's already he cannot afford the property, and the loan is building up, and overall he's under tremendous amount of stress. So that is again, if you can access this property before it even hits the market, then you're giving increasing the non-financial value tremendously, because you are giving him getting him out of the stressful situation, and there are no selling agent fees, and you're providing a solution to his problem.
Yeah, I would actually say that in these situations, there's actually 3 different phases and 3 different levels of discounts that are potentially applicable. So there's the early phase where they recognize that they're in financial distress, but the bank hasn't yet chased them. But they know that they're not getting the income they need, and they know that they're about to start to default soon. In those instances, they're probably willing to take a small haircut on their price point. Then there's the second stage where they do start to actually shortfall their payments, and then the bank starts to put pressure on them and start to send the letters. But at this stage, it's not yet in legal proceedings. And so at this point, everything that you were touching on starts to come into play, and they would rather keep their clean credit rating and get access to some of the equity they've saved, even if not it's all of it. And then the third stage is, well, once the bank has actually taken possession and the vendor's lost control, then the ability to negotiate directly with the bank, because the bank is then going to incur a whole bunch of costs as well. And so there's, depending upon where you are in the stage and who you're actually dealing with, I think there's 3 different layers of those discounts.
I think the only thing I would like to add is, even if after the bank has repossessed the property, because of the laws surrounding it, you can still do a deal, because the banks have a obligation to do the things right by the customer, right? So even if the property is being put on the market by the bank, if the owner comes up with the money, then you can still cut a deal.
Okay, good to know. So that's a new learning to me. I didn't know that one. So that's that would be an awesome outcome if the vendor had already gone through the point of repossession and they could save themselves. I'm sure they'd be open to super discounts at that point.
Correct.
Very good. Well, let's have a look at the next one, distance. So there's 2 different elements of distance here. There's how far away the person is that owns the property from where the property actually is. So they're out of area. They don't understand what's happening in the area. They don't understand the market drivers that are happening. Or my favorite one is when there's an agent that's selling the property and the agent is out of area. That's by far my favorite, to be brutally honest, because quite often that agent doesn't want to drive 2 hours to go to the home open.
Not only does it not, I mean, he might be lazy, and then it costs him more to for that property compared to a local property, and also he might not have the knowledge of that market.
Almost invariably, yeah.
Yeah, so that gives you another opportunity to for getting a discount. So all of these are basically, we are identifying some situations where there is a higher probability of discount. So there are a million properties on real estate, but you need to be very choosy where you want to spend your time and effort.
Absolutely. And I would say with those out of area agents, I found that, and this is anecdotal evidence and certainly just based on what I've seen in this process, but it's usually an agent who's a friend of the property owner, and they're trying to, the friend has said, hey, can you sell it for me? You're an agent, you must be really good. And that poor agent is a long way out of the area. They're not really, they want to do the right thing for their friend, but at the same time, it's now become a burden for that agent. You know, they have to drive many hours. They don't know the area. They don't have the contacts in the area. They don't have the database in the area. And so the needs that you're solving is actually the need of the agent in that instance. You know, you're trying to take a problem away from the agent. So, and, you know, whilst they want to look after their friend, you know, it's being an agent's still a business and they need to look after themselves. And so, you know, they're looking for a sale that is as clean and quick as humanly possible, so they don't have to keep driving every weekend.
Correct.
So our next one, distress or disaster. So I've found that many times the fundamentals of a market might be very, very strong, but there'll be an incident or an accident or something that happens that temporarily impacts the area or temporarily impacts the property. So there could be floods, there could be cyclones, you know, there could be a fire, something along those lines that temporarily impacts things that will mean that that property right here, right now is a bargain, but in 12 months' time, the market might be back to where it should be.
Yeah, that is a situation where you know, everybody has heard this term, you know, cash, equity rich and cash poor, right? Asset rich and cash poor. So, say for example, there is an investment property, and let us say for some reason they want to raise the strata levies, and they've introduced, you know, whatever they have to do to fix the property, whether it's it has been affected by a uninsured event. They're raising $20,000 in the next quarter. Now, everybody may not have that money ready, so they get into that situation, and where they have there is no risk management and there is no emergency cash buffers. So in that situation, they are sort of forced to sell, and there can be a number of situations like this. Like some people are overzealous with property. They take high LVR, they are overcommitted, and unexpected event like job loss or sickness happens, right? Another situation, people buy.
Perfect one right now is COVID. COVID's causing all sorts of distress with people losing their jobs, and you know, it's distress right now, and later on that may turn into mortgage repossession. But right now, there's people under a lot of distress.
True. Also, say for example, the rates are now the lowest in the history. Interest rates can change anytime. If people are borrowing too much at this point in time based on the current interest rates, and you know, 5 years later, if it can easily double, right? The scenario might be different. Or take another example, like off-the-plan properties, right? You the property might you buy the pay the deposit, and the property might take 1 year, 2 years to build. Right. By that time, the market can change, the lending conditions can change, and if you cannot get the loan at that point in time, you will become a distressed seller. You either have the option of losing that 10% deposit, or um, uh, or you sell it for a discount. So it's your choice.
Yeah, absolutely. And our lucky last one, mate, is deadline. So, many instances where a deadline might start to apply to the person selling. So it might be end of financial year, and they either need a sale before the end of financial year for tax reasons, or depending upon the state they're in, land tax happens sometimes around the Christmas period. And that sometimes that can be distressing and so they don't want to own the property past the date where land tax actually gets applied. That might incur some additional costs for them. And maybe they've actually purchased another property somewhere else, and they're committed, their funds are committed, and they've got a point in time where they need to actually have some certainty on this sale in order to throw their funds into another property, for example. So any other instances of deadlines that you can think of?
I think that pretty much covers it, because I already shared my personal example of the end of financial year sales, because I was I was on a low marginal tax, so it would mean I would pay less tax. Now, in the case of, let's say, somebody who's got a lot of properties in New South Wales, and there's a land tax threshold and is over that, then it will be significantly advantageous for him to sell the property before 31st of December, because that's the cutoff date at which decides the land tax. And it might be a situation where to the seller it means a lot of land tax, whereas for a buyer it may not mean anything. So it's just you're creating that extra pool of money by taking the tax out of the equation.
Very good. Okay, well, I'm mindful of time, mate, because we've been talking for 50 odd minutes already, believe it or not, and we haven't yet taken any questions from our audience. So let's very quickly just show a couple of examples of how people might spot some of these distressed properties in some ads and that sort of thing, and then maybe we can go and take some questions from the audience. How's that?
Yeah, that sounds good.
So talk us through this example, mate. You gave us this one to show about. It looks like it says under instruction of liquidators of Gordon Five Proprietary Limited in liquidation. Well, that one's pretty clear. And it's amazing how many times the ad itself is actually telling you that people are actually in distress.
Okay, this is a perfect example, because this property I bought roughly at 50% discount. Now, this is not the type of discount you will get in most of those properties. The reason I got this heavy discount was because it's car spaces. Not everybody is familiar with or may like to own a car space, because first of all, this was not in CBD, right? In CBD, it is easier to find out what you can rent it out for, and therefore you can easily calculate back what is the value to you. So there was a lot of work that I needed to do, because this property is right on those who are familiar with Sydney, this property is right on the crossing of Epping Road and Lane Cove Road, and across the Epping Road there is a lot of commercial. It's all commercial buildings like Foxtel, like Aristocrat, and so all the big companies. So I had to do a lot of homework to figure out what the rent is, and then negotiate the price for that. But as you can see, it was online. It was there for everyone to see. So it's a question of having an eye for the opportunity and valuing it appropriately, and then negotiating the deal.
Absolutely. So got another one right here. So again, this one's screaming out. It says mortgagee in possession.
Okay.
This is basically the bank has come in. and the bank is effectively selling it in this instance.
Yeah. Just one additional point I wanted to make regarding the last slide. I negotiated the price based on what the agent told me. Agent told me this cancel rates is $50 per week, something around that time, and around that figure. And the strata is also roughly around I think $15 or something like that, right? It turns out that the cancel rates was actually closer to $200 per quarter. Why? Because the council has got a minimum price they will take, irrespective of whether you own 15 square meters of a car space or it's a full unit, 100 square meters, right? So that helped me to negotiate the price, drop the price by 33%.
Yep. Well,
All
gotta
right.
know your numbers.
Yeah, so because this is such a low value property, and if you don't get the price right, this could have easily become a disaster, because a large part of the income goes into the outgoings.
So what about this one, Arun? I'm wanting to get some questions from our crowd, so from our audience before they run away.
Right. Okay, so this one is again a very straightforward and a current example, because this is as good as last week, and clearly says mortgage in possession and zone R4. And I approached the agent. I asked him what sort of price you're expecting, 700 to 800 type thing, and went to the auction, and it sold for 765,000. Now, the beauty of this is it sold for 800,000 in 2014. So it's sold at a discount even after the price 6 years back.
But this is what you're referring to here. So it sold 6 years earlier for 800, and you picked it up for less than that. Or it sold
I
for less.
didn't pick it up, but this is what it sold for.
Yeah. Very good. Okay. Well, mate, I am really interested to get some questions from the audience.
Sure.
Whilst I go and work out what questions we've actually got, this is how people can actually contact you. So Arun Burla at Uber Dream Homes. So they specialize in discounted properties with development potential. So anyone wanting to, I guess, contact Arun, that's how to do that. Now I'm just going to whiz over to this other computer over here and see what questions I can see that have been coming through. So Frank's got a question. Which data software is available out there to find deceased and distressed properties? So is there a specific database you use or anything like that, mate?
There is the common ones, the real estate and domain, and there are so many agent sites, and there are so many other small sites. The one that I looked for, this liquidation one, that comes from a site called Squiz, squiz.com.au.
Yes, Squiz.
And there's so many of them. There's homely.com.au, there's home loans, and sorry, not home loans, all homes, and there are quite a few of them. So if you have got the time and to figure it, go through them, then yeah, it requires a lot of time. So that, as I said, there are it's a two-step process. Identify the property, that takes time, and then negotiate the property, understand the needs, and formulate an offer and negotiate.
Yeah, so those websites that you're talking to, just for everyone's clarity, they're listing portals, and there are I guess the major portals that everyone's familiar with, which is realestate.com and Domain. But the ones that you're talking about are the smaller portals, that I guess the more budget listing portals, where, you know, particularly if people are in financial distress, they're going to tend to advertise on those cheaper portals because they don't have the money.
There are do-it-yourself sellers, right? They just you can get packages. There are people who provide packages. They will provide the signage, and they will provide some ad material, and they will advertise for you at a very cheaper price. But then they are not the sites which are visited by, which are seen by everybody.
Yeah, and I've even seen people putting free ads on Gumtree and things like that, trying to sell their properties, and so you can pretty much, when they're trying to do it for free, you can pretty much guess that they're thrifty, for want of a better word, and that money is actually quite tight, and they're quite sensitive to price. So there's lots of opportunity there. Now,
There are scores of them because they're trying to save on the selling agent fees. They're also trying to save on the advertising fee, but then it's in a sense false economy because they are limiting their market and reach as well.
Yeah, correct. So I've got a question here from JJ. He's saying, how do we identify these opportunities? Is it by letter drops or by other means? And you've touched on it there, but it's really looking at those smaller listing portals. They're the ones to find, the ones that are on market. But absolutely, letterbox drops are going to get the off-market ones.
Oh, you can do letterbox drops. You can put advertisements in the newspaper. You can do online advertisements. You can get in touch with solicitors, and you might get some access to off-market deals as to what is going to come in the future and save the time for the distressed owner. There are so many ways, but I don't want to sell myself here, but I would say a specialist buyer agent is the most time effective, because unless you are doing this full time, it's not going to be time effective for you. If you're a developer, that's what you hone in, and you benefit from a specialist buyer agent, because not every like these situations is going to be a discounted deal. So there's a lot of time involved in identifying the deal and drilling down on it, and then negotiating the deal.
Yeah. So, and there's also, you might find a property that's a discount, but it might not be developable. And so it might meet one of your needs, not two of your needs. Someone like yourself will have markets where you can get rid of both sets of properties. So it's much more effective for you to search for all of those and the like. So Jane's got a question. So how do you come up with the price point for these properties? Do you do a valuation?
I use RP data. I look for properties which are sold in the neighborhood with similar land area, and especially if I'm looking for a development property, I'm looking for a rundown property which is selling close to land value. And now my number one target is disease estate, or it could be even upgrader or a downsizer, right? Because people who have reached that age, they've held that property for 30, 40 years. Normally would be a bigger block, and it would be people are trying to save money, so they are, they're generally a good chance that it will be the right development site.
Yeah. So JJ's got a question. So it's in reference to when banks are actually taking possession, so mortgagee in possession. So doesn't the bank have to actually take that repossessed property to the market, or do they have to?
The banks have to do that, and they will sell it by auction. But at any point in the process, if the buyer, if the owner comes with the money, then they have an obligation to consider that first.
Yeah.
And because of the National Consumer Credit Code and whatever it is.
Yeah, and something to be very aware of is that the bank is only going to care about getting back the money owed to them. So no matter what the property is worth, the bank only cares about how much is owed to them. So they would be willing to sell it at a discount so long as their debt is covered, and they're not really worried how much actually gets passed back to the vendor. So where possible, if you're wanting the greatest discount, deal with the bank. But if you're trying to do, I guess that look after I guess the other person on the other side of the transaction, you want to deal with the vendor and make sure that their reputation's looked after, their credit history's looked after, and they actually get some dollars in their pocket as well. And that way you can still sleep at night. Now, Emily's got a question which was probably in context to when we were talking, so I'm not really sure exactly what it's talking about. So Emily, your question is that in every state? I'm not quite sure what that is. If you want to restate that question, that would be fantastic. We'll loop around and grab that in a sec. Dan's got a question. Where can you look to see the properties that are mortgagee in possession?
Again, there is online portals where it explicitly says that. Sometimes they will advertise the property and without explicitly mentioning that it's a mortgagee repossession. Also, if you are familiar with how the court procedures work, you can find out off market before it hits the market.
Yeah. So to I guess touch on that, the legal process is that every single legal case is actually gazetted or published. So you can see, tomorrow in the court, it's going to be Smith versus Jones, or it's going to be Westpac versus Smith. As soon as you see that it's Westpac or Commonwealth Bank versus anybody, then chances are it's a good chance that there's a repossession either in process or about to be finalised.
Also, I might like to add lot of these cases will go through the court proceedings, because there is if in the case of a divorce, it's a family court. In case of a bankruptcy, liquidation, mortgage repossession, it's a different. So each even if you understand the court proceedings, it is a different case for each type of transaction.
Yeah. So Jason's got a question, and some of these questions are pretty similar to what we've already covered. So, how do you find them off market before they are available to the public? That's being proactive. That's having relationships with agents. That's sending letterbox drops out. That's having relationships with solicitors and accountants and things like that, where they can actually tell you those things before they hit the market, or being proactive and sending letters out.
Or you can put in advertisements and let people come to you if you develop a reputation that you are able to sell, you are able to settle the deal very quickly. People can come to you because they know they've got a problem, and as long as they know that you can solve the problem and it will be done quickly and timely, then you are in business.
Absolutely, and that advertising is probably a really good insight. A lot of people don't want the the public scrutiny of going through the advertising process and then having it say, hey, financial distress. They don't want the world to know that. So they're quite often wanting to deal with it under the covers.
Right.
So Tarek has said, in many instances, the buyer negotiates directly with the selling agent. What do you suggest to get the agent to disclose the seller's situation and or need?
Sorry, Rob, could you say that again?
So in many instances, the buyer negotiates with a selling agent.
Yes.
So what do you suggest to get the agent to disclose the underlying seller's actual situation and or need?
This is what you need to talk through as to, for example, if I'm negotiating, I will ask them, will your vendor be open to a longer settlement period, because I want to do a DA before I settle on this property, so I get a DA uplift, and then I'm better, becomes easier to get a loan. And if the answer is he might not do more than 2 months, then I know there is possibly there is an urgency to it. And so there are questions, the way you negotiate, the way you extract information, rather than asking, is it a divorce situation? Obviously, that's not the right question to ask.
Yeah. And I would also say that wherever there's a selling agent in the middle, they often act as a gatekeeper, and you need to, so they've added a third person in the negotiation process. And so you need to also solve the agent's needs as well as the vendor's needs. The agent's need is, well, he wants a commission check and he wants certainty of his sale as soon as humanly possible. So you need to make sure that that agent is very aware of the fact that, you know, if you're wanting a longer settlement, that he's going to get his commission check early or something, you know, or maybe he's going to get the sale of the finished product as well, so he gets 2 commissions. But effectively, you're negotiating with in a 3-way arrangement wherever there's an agent involved.
Yeah, the buyer agents are still not very common in Australia, though they are pretty much there in US, and most of the deals transactions happen through the buyer's agent. In Australia, possibly the number of buyer agents are not even 10% of the number of selling agents, so it's not a very common, commonly known, but it's picking up very fast now.
Yeah. So Rajiv's got a question, and he says in Melbourne, but I'd say this is actually everywhere. Most mortgagee and possessions go to auction. Is there a way to get out of it before the auction actually occurs?
Yeah, as I said, all these transactions, whether it's a diseased estate, divorce, bankruptcy, liquidation, mortgage repossession, they all have one thing in common. They all go to the court. And like you said, everybody has access to the information. You need to figure out where to get that information. It's not as simple as just going to realestate.com.au and figuring it out. So you need to understand that process, and then you need to work through that. And also you need to be very, very patient. It takes a long time because it's not on the real estate domain where the owner is mentally prepared to do the transaction, right? There may be in a long drawn out process, they might be in a state of denial. And so you have to, it takes much more effort to do an off the market deal.
Yeah. There's about 3 people asking the same question here. So I'm just going to kind of join this one together. But we mentioned some of those smaller websites, but people didn't catch them. So it was Squiz, Homely. What were some of the other ones that you had, Arun?
There's All Homes. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I can send it to you. If somebody is interested, please send me, contact me directly, and I can help you with that.
Yeah, that's probably best. We put your contact details up. They can rewind the replay and send you an email. That's probably the better way to actually deal with that. But I guess in a very generic sense, if it's a smaller player, if it's a smaller listing portal provider, that's probably the place to actually go. Lots of people saying great presentation. So I guess thank you from my side and clearly from Arun as well. Karen's saying, yes, you are clearly a specialist here, Arun, and very time consuming. So I sense you may have at least one person reaching out, mate.
Thank you.
Hassin's saying, I would like to know the link, please. Thank you very much. I think that's, again, the websites, more people asking for the websites. So what we might do is just summarize that and post that in after this event to this same chat window is probably the best way to do that. Emily is asking about the sale to you after the banker has taken it over. Okay, that was her question before. Now I've got to loop back and go, what was the question before? Because now I know the context. So give me 2 secs while I do that. Is that in every state was her question. And the context was after the bank has taken over possession. Okay, so in short, Emily, yes, in every state, you can actually negotiate with the vendor even after the bank has actually taken over possession. I think that is me interpreting your question correctly. So hopefully that's the case.
So my understanding is that the National Consumer Credit Code applies all over Australia. I may be wrong on this, but that's my understanding.
It does. Yeah. So Barbara says, do you develop relationships with the bank?
No, not really. Haven't needed to, but supposing it was a mortgage repossession case where the property is down under and there is no equity, there is a way you can negotiate with the bank for below the market price. Because as I mentioned to you, the bank has to spend a lot of money with the solicitor, and time is also important for them because it goes as a NPA loan, right? That reduces their capability to advance more loans. So they are also in a hurry to do that. So they might take a clipping themselves if the property has gone under, because there's no point negotiating with the owner at that point because he doesn't have anything in the game. However, he can still save his credit rating. So he without paying anything. So he will be all the more cooperative. It's just negotiating and striking a deal with the bank directly. So that is the only situation where you would deal with the bank.
Very good. Okay, well, that looks like the last of our questions, mate. So I'm going to say thank you, Ray. It's been, I guess, very well received from the comments that we're getting from our audience. We'll make sure that we put your contact details into the post itself, as well as those websites that we mentioned. But I want to thank you very much for your time, and to our audience, thank you very much. We run these Sunday sessions every single Sunday at 5 o'clock. So make sure that you like our Facebook page. You will get the alerts every time we go live. And we also run events in Brisbane, Sydney, and Melbourne, meetup events on, I guess, different Saturdays of the month. So make sure that you actually check those out in the links above. So that said, mate, thank you very much. And we'll catch everybody on the next one.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Rob, for the opportunity. And thank you for all the viewers as well.
No worries. Good man. Thanks, mate.
Okay. Bye.